Hello, class. Welcome to Philosophy 1301. I'm doing much better. My eyes are still kind of fucked up. I can barely see. But here we go. Let's do this. We're doing chapter 3, which is Socrates. Where's an examined life? That's taken from one of his most famous quotes, Socrates. Well, Socrates, first of all, let's be clear, he never wrote anything. Socrates was just an itinerant professor. He would just go around to the agora in Athens, in ancient Athens. The agora means the public forum, the public square. So like a big public marketplace. And then in the middle of the marketplace, there's like a forum where people would discuss politics and current events and stuff. Current event at that time was the Peloponnesian War, the war between the Delian Leagues, which is Athens and its allies, versus the Peloponnesian League, or nation states, which is Sparta and its allies. So then we're going to go over that a little bit. I'm going to focus for this lecture more on history, on the historical context, on Socrates' life, because I believe that if you know the history surrounding Athens at this time period, which is about 430, the middle of the 400s BCEs, you be better able to understand not just Socrates' life and thought, his philosophy, but also the reasons of his demise, the reasons of why he hated democracy and so forth. So I'm a strong believer that history really is essential in order to understand a certain topic or a certain idea. You got to understand the historical context around that idea or topic to have a full picture of it. So this lecture is a little bit more of a historical lecture of history than philosophy, but nonetheless, I'm going to go over chapter 3. So let's begin, because my eyes are burning, and I don't want to stay too long here. I'm going to go back into my cave in my room and hide from the sun. All right, so last lecture, we were talking about the pre-Socratics and the sophists. So the big shift from the pre-Socratics here, right, but why they're a big deal, the pre-Socratics, right? Thales being one of the first one, and then Anaximander, Anaxagoras, Pythagoras, all those people we went over last time. Really cool, fascinating people, but their main commonality is them going from the mythos to the logos, from the mythopoeic understanding of the world to more logical, rational understanding of the world around them. And so for the pre-Socratics, right, another commonality besides that, going from mythos to logos, is that they were asking these large fundamental questions about the makeup of the universe, the constitution of the universe, of the earth. What is the world made out of? Water, says Thales, right? The Aperions is Anaximander, right? So it depends on who you ask, but they're trying to figure out what is the fundamental basis of existence, right? Big fucking question here, right? Socrates, on the other side, he kind of cements this philosophical logos, this rationalization, instead of using myth and tradition. He uses this rationality, the philosophical, I guess, method, blanking out here, his elenchus, right, the Socratic method, right, is not to think about abstract ideas and about how the universe is worked, but about our lives internally and directly with others, right? So he kind of brings philosophy down from up in the clouds, which that's really funny to use that word, and I use it intentionally because that's the title of a play, of a satire by this Greek playwright called Aristophanes. And Aristophanes, in the clouds, he portrays Socrates as a sophist, as one of these sophists who's just not really cares about truth, but usually but bends the weaker argument and makes it stronger, right? So this relativist approach, which Socrates totally hated, the sophists and relativism. Socrates believed there was a truth out there that we need to grasp, right? And again, right, he brings philosophical inquiry not from these abstract ideals as Aristophanes and the sophists and the pre-Socratics are concerned about, but to our everyday life, basically. So the unexamined life is not worth living. That's the quote. And it comes from the Apology, which is you have a good excerpt of it on your textbook. And I strongly suggest, I'm not suggest, you need to read this uh, for this class and just for your own betterment of your own life. It's a great piece of literature, Western, written in 2000, over 2,000 years ago, and it's still fantastic. So read that, The Apologies, in chapter 3, and that's where you have this famous quote that is attributed to Socrates. So this is written by Plato. Right? He never wrote anything, Socrates. Everything that we know from about Socrates is mostly from other writers, namely Plato and Aristophanes, Gorgias. So you have two kinds of Socrates: the wise sage, Plato's Socrates, as some scholars call them, or the other Socrates, a dumb sophist, right? That's just too much preoccupied with abstract ideals. I uploaded the Aristophanes, the Clouds, up on your Blackboard. It's a short little play, and it's super funny, hilarious. I strongly recommend that to read it. I recommend to read it. It's not a need. Well, it should be a need as well to read that too. But go ahead and read the Apology for sure, and strongly recommend to read Aristophanes, the Clouds, to understand these two perspectives of Socrates. All right. So again, Socrates was writing at a time, well, not writing, thinking and influencing uh, other thinkers and young people at a time of constant change, um, at a time of warfare. He was actually a soldier for the Peloponnesian War, and we'll get into the history of that in a little moment. I just want to kind of introduce Socrates here. Um, all right, so let's move on. So the philosophical gadfly, that's the nickname that is given to Socrates. Socrates would go around Athens asking questions, right? The story goes like this, that this guy, what's his name? I forgot the name of this guy. But basically, he goes on, and it's in the Apology. I have it. Chaerephon. So Chaerephon is a good friend of Socrates, and he goes up to the Oracle of Delphi. So I think I talked about the Oracle of Delphi in my last lecture, but really quickly to recap, there was in the Greek world. And so the Greek world is huge. I don't know if I could share this. Let's try this out. There we go. Share. So I don't know if you guys are seeing this. I hope so. But the Greek world, it's huge back then. This is in 431 BCE, at the onset of the Peloponnesian War. So they have Greek colonies, right, the age of colonization in Greece, all the way from the Black Sea, right, where Constantinople, or what's today's name for that? It's in Turkey. Wow, I'm blanking out a lot today. I really want to go there. Um, Anyways, this is a meeting place between the East and the West. Right, it's in Turkey, present-day Turkey. The Hagia Sophia there, the temple, a huge temple, beautiful temple. So all the way from there, all the way up to Sicily. You don't see Sicily over here, but to Italy, right? Italy, Syracuse, all these Italian states. As a matter of fact, over here in Italy, it was called, what was it? Greca Majoris, something like that, meaning the Greater Greek. So many Greeks were living in Italy at that time period because they colonized. So let me go way back. Let's start the history here then. Fuck it. Um, so Greece, right? Let me see if that didn't work. I have a map over here. So Greece, it's big. This is what I'm talking about right here. Let me see it. So over here we have the boot of Italy, right? And that shaded is Greek colonies. There's the island of Sicily, right? And then over here you have what we think of Greece, right? Over here we have Sparta, and then more up to the north we have Athens. We have a bunch of little Greek isles. Right? Over here is the Black Sea. So I'm talking about. And here Constantinople. So it's huge. The Greek world during this time period is huge. It encompasses the entire Mediterranean. And what this map doesn't capture, because it's written by a Western scholar, is Persia, right? So right before the Peloponnesian War, the Delian League, which is Athens and its allies, and then the Peloponnesian League, which is Sparta and its allies, got together, united to defeat the Persians. Tremendous, huge, perhaps the biggest empire during this time period. Actually, China was the biggest empire in this time period, and then Persia. And what's going on at this time period is over here you have encroachments. You have, like I said, it's a borderland. There's all these ideas flushing through this Mediterranean world. So you have the Persians, and then you have these Greek states fighting with each other. So before the Peloponnesian Wars broke out in 431, you had the Persian invasions. This is kind of captured, as dramatized, it's Hollywoodized, right? It's Hollywood in that movie 300, right? This is Sparta, shit like that, right? That captures like one of the Battle of Thermopylae. Whereas when we, and I say we because we're part of the Western tradition, right? We're part of the European tradition here. We defeated, or not defeated, pretty much held back the Persians from invading their main Greek land. And this is because the Spartans, the Athenians, the Ionians, everybody got together. All the Greeks got together. It's really rare. But we got together to defeat, or to help, at least held back the Persians from crossing the Mediterranean and invading the main Greek land, the mainland Greek. After that, right, what happened is that we had this treasury. All these Greek states that got together to defeat the Persians, there was this treasury. I forgot what fucking island it was. Delos. It's Delos. I'm sure it's Delos. One of those islands off the Mediterranean coast of Greece. And they, Athenians were the ones in charge of this treasury. So the Spartans would pitch in into this coffer. All the other allies would pitch in, the Corinthians, right, the Ionians. Everybody, all the Greeks would pitch in. But the ones who were in charge, the treasurer, were Athenians. And what happened is these guys were a little bit corrupt. They started funneling some of that money that was supposed to be for the entire Greeks for Athens itself. So people found out about this, and rightly so, got pissed off, and broke away from Athens, broke away from this Delian League. You have the Delos, the Delian League, and then you have the Peloponnesian Leagues, which is Sparta and then their allies, right? So that's what's going on. This is the start of the Peloponnesian War, right? This fight over Athens being pretty greedy with their money, taking advantage, right? Because they think they're the smarter ones, right? Athens is the city of the goddess Athena, the goddess of fucking knowledge, the goddess of wisdom, right? So they think they're the ones that should be in charge of everybody else, including the Spartans. And if you know anything about history or about Sparta, you know, Spartans are pretty feisty people. They're like, fuck you, you know, you're not better than us. We'll kill you, as a matter of fact. And that's the Peloponnesian War, right? It's this war between these Athenians thinking they're better than Spartans, and the Spartans are like, no, we'll teach you. And it's just control over the Greek mainland, right, after the Persian Wars. So you have the Persian Wars, and you have the Peloponnesian Wars, right, following the other. Right? It's turmoil, a lot of changes, a lot of ideas happening and being transmitted because of war, right? So this is the historical background that I want to give you. Another thing that's going on here, so all these different Greek city-states have their own way of governing. Athens, right, is famously known for inventing democracy. But keep in mind that these were experiments. Right? They were not afraid to experiment. In Athens, they went so far, so radical with their experiments in democracy, where it was a direct democracy, where I think it was every year or so, randomly, they would choose 500 citizens. And citizens here is key, It's a key term, citizens, Athenian citizens. Not everybody was a citizen that was living in Athens. Right? So keep that in mind. There was hierarchies, there was oppression, right? There were slaves, there were servants, there was a woman in Athens who could not vote, right? Right? You had to have property to vote and stuff like that, right? So there was always qualifications to be a citizen. Nonetheless, every citizen had a equal chance to be randomly selected into this council of 500, which would set up the laws of the land, right? So it's like if you're a citizen of the U.S., right? Think about it today. It's like this: instead of voting for our representatives, like, so what we have here in the U.S. is a representative democracy, not a direct democracy. We vote for our representatives. We don't vote for our presidents, but we vote for everything else, right? Senator, House of Representative, right? Texas senator, state representative, local mayor, right? Local representatives, local commissioners, et cetera, right? Everything but the president we don't vote for, right? It's a representative. It's not direct democracy, right? But imagine we had that. In Athens was this, randomly you could be selected, be part of the 500, and every year it would change, just randomly, at random, just people. It's kind of like jury duty, something like that. You just get selected at random, and now you, for a whole year, you're going to become part of the Senate, part of this council of 500, be doing laws and stuff. I wonder if we turn to that system, how if things will work out better than what we have right now. Right? You know how politicians are crooked as hell, whether they're Republican or Democrats, right? Same crap. Anyways, going back to ancient Athens. All right, so we're in the middle of the Peloponnesian War. Socrates is a fucking soldier in the Peloponnesian War. He's believed to be, right, accounts of him during as a soldier is that he's brave, right, very smart, of course, right, courageous, right, a good fighter, a good warrior, right. He came back with all four limbs. That's very fucking important when you go off to war, right. Unfortunately, a lot of our good troops, right, fellow troop members, right, had a couple of family members that came back with missing arms and stuff, right. This is the price of war. This guy came, totally intact. He actually, as a matter of fact, saved a guy's life in that war. And this guy's name is Alshibh. Alshibh, very important character in this saga of Socrates' life. So Alshibh is this hotshot young man from Athens. Everybody's in love with him, right? He's fucking hot, right? I don't know, Chris Hemsworth, or I don't know who's hot out there, right? Brad Pitt, right? Or whatever you think is the hottest guy out there. Can't think of any other good-looking man. George Clooney, right? Whatever. I don't think he's handsome at all, though. But anyways, right? Alshibh, right? This young guy, and back then in Athens, right? If you're hot, beautifully outside externally, the idea was that you're also internally beautiful, right? You're morally good, you're courageous, right? So beauty equals all the good, right? Externally, so it's pretty superficial people here. What I'm hearing the subject, they're also pedophiles. Socrates and all the Athenians, they were all about young men, really young men, like 12, 13-year-old men. And they would hire these men, those little boy slaves or servants, to dance for these aristocratic men like Socrates. Well, Socrates was not an aristocrat, but he would hang out with these people at these parties. And they would pay these young men to dance for them naked, right? And possibly even sleep with them. So let's get that clear, that the society was called pederasty, where it was supposed to be this mentorship relationship with a lot of erotic overtones. It's straight up pedophilia for me, right? It was these ancient Greek men that were so obsessed with beauty, and the standard of beauty was a young man, right? A beautiful young man, it's fit and Olympic. Alshibh, right? That was the epitome of that. He was an Olympic winner, right? Of the chariot winner, right? He was a politician, right? He was a student of Socrates. He was actually a general during the Peloponnesian Wars, this Alshibh. Right? And it was a story that Alshibh even made a move towards Socrates. And Socrates is an old man here, right? He's an old, wise man, right? And he has all these young men following him around because what he's saying is so radical, right? go against tradition, basically, think for yourself, examine your own life, be critical about authority. And young men are just loving this, right? Because we're young men, right? The young people are rebellious in nature. Remember when you were 15, 16, and fighting with your parents all the time? I remember that myself, going through that. Just rebelling just because I was trying to find out who I was. Right? And this is exactly what Socrates teaches you, right? Examine your own life. The unexamined life is not worth living. So all these young aristocratic men from Athens, right, were enamored with Socrates, totally in love with him. And not just because of his ideas, but also just sexually, right? It's gotta get this in your head that these people had weird cultural traits, right, that were be looked upon nowadays. And that's the way it was, though. That's the way these people were used to. Anyways, let me give you some a quote. This is from Xenophon, one of Socrates' student, a young man, right? And this is what he says about Socrates. Whereas the mere fragments of you, Socrates, in your words, even at second hand, and however imperfectly repeated, amaze and possess the souls of every man, woman, and child who comes within hearing of them. Right? If I were not afraid that you would think me hopelessly drunk, I would have sworn as well as spoken to the influence which they have always had and still have over me. My heart leaps within me more than more than that of the Corinthian frenzied reveler. Right? So he's all right. These people are enamored with Socrates' thought, right? So you have Alshibh. Let's go back to Alshibh. Returning to Alshibh. So this is the epitome of the hot young man, right? The epitome of beauty, right? So everybody's enamored with him. He does have a lisp, right? He kind of talks like that with a little lisp. But that even makes it hotter, right? People think that just makes him sexier. So Alcibiades has it all going on, right? And he is enamored with Socrates because they become best friends, actually. And this is the person that Socrates saves in the Peloponnesian War. So Alcibiades is like forever indebted to Socrates, at least in his own words. But Alcibiades is stupid. Motherfucker is an idiot, right? And so let me tell you about Alcibiades. Let's go talk about him. So he's a general in Peloponnesian War, right? Because people think he's courageous, whatever. He's beautiful, so he's going to be a good general. He's going to fight off the Spartans. So we're fighting the Spartans, right? So we're in the main Greek area. Let me bust out with the map again. Let me see. So we're here, fighting all over. So Sparta are really good in land. So Sparta doesn't have a navy really. Athens only has a really good navy. So it's like it lasts 20 years, like 21 years, this fucking war, because of this. Because Sparta fights in land really good, and Athens fights in water really good. So think about this allegory here. It's like Sparta. Think about Sparta as an elephant, and Athens somewhere up here. So Sparta is down here. Athens is somewhere over here. Can't see well. My eyes are hurting. So Sparta, the elephant, Athens is a whale. Think about those two fighting. An elephant and a whale fighting. It's not gonna happen. Right? So it's a stalemate for a fucking long time. And to make matters worse, the second year of the war breaks out in 432 BCE. There's a plague, kind of like what we have right now, going down in Athens. So Athens, because they're afraid of the Spartans fighting them inland, they create a big ass wall around Athens, and they enclose them. They kind of quarantine themselves, right? They don't allow people to go in or out of Athens, right? And that kind of works out until the plague breaks out, and it devastates the population of Athens. This plague. As a matter of fact, even their leader, Pericles, succumbs to this disease. Right? And Pericles was like one of these philosopher kings who studied philosophy. He had historians and poets and artists around his court. Right? He's kind of responsible for the golden age of Athens. So he dies here. Right? So Alcibiades is a general, and they're fighting in the Greek area, right? And they're spending a lot of money, and resources, and men trying to reach Sparta via the navy. For some reason, some fucking weird reason, Alcibiades has a great idea of instead of continuing the campaign to Sparta, to open up a second front and going all the way to fucking Sicily and conquer that area. And that fails terribly. Right? So not only does Alcibiades open up a second front that's costly and it's a complete failure, right now they're losing resources and men to fight the Spartans. That was the main reason of the Peloponnesian War. Right? And then now you have more enemies now because of this adventure over here that Alcibiades went off to Sicily. So the Athenians are like, fuck, we made a mistake putting Alcibiades, this beautiful young man, as a general. So let's bring him back. He's an idiot. And let's put him in trial. Let's exile him. And then when they're doing this, a lot of news pops out. A lot of discoveries, new information about Alcibiades pops out. All these terrible things he did before he left off to the war as a young man with his group of men that were influenced by this crazy old guy named Socrates. Right? So what was it so crazy that Alcibiades did with his little crew of young men, of their aristocratic young men? So these young men are so influenced by Socrates, right? Socrates is all about, go against tradition, right? Question tradition, question authority. Right? And authority over there is a mixture between mythology and then the Council of 500. So in Athens, in ancient Athens, they have this weird custom. So besides pedophilia, they have this weird custom called the Hermais, which are these statues, right? These tributes, these statues, usually made out of marble if you're really rich and stuff, of the god Hermes, the messenger of the gods, Hermes, the Hermais. One of the weird characteristics of all these statues, they gotta have this thing to be godly, to be faithful, to be effective, right? For the gods to be pleased, is they gotta have a big ass fucking boner, right? A big penis erected, right? In the statue. Fucking Greeks are weird, man. This is true history, right? And what Hermias does, and what Alcibiades does with his little gang of aristocratic young men, they're like, okay, we want to question traditions, even religion. So people are so obsessed with this religion, right? Doing these weird little rituals, right? There, if you do this statue with a big boner on top of it, right, protruding out, then you're gonna get good luck and stuff. Right? So what he does is that these people, they break all those boners of these statues off of this neighborhood in Athens, right? This rich neighborhood in Athens, as to demonstrate, right? If God exists, if God is the one that controls the world, then when I do this iconoclastic move, right? When I offend the gods in this manner by breaking off these boners, and that's a technical term I'm using, boner. No, it's not. By breaking them off, right? These things, God should punish me, right? So they're laughing at the gods directly by doing this blasphemy, right? It's blasphemy what they're doing. So this is the Hermione episode. So that pisses off, and they do a lot of other little things like that in front of these authority figures, right? So Alcibiades has already this bad rep now. So not only does he does a terrible job leading the Athenians astray and the Peloponnesians, and pretty much costing them the war, really, because of this. He has this bad reputation as being against tradition, of not following orders, right? And then he goes off worse to add insult to injury, right? So he's commanded to go into exile, to come to Athens for trial for this stuff, for not following state gods, the gods, for going against tradition of the gods, for his terrible job as a general, going off to Sicily, while we should be fighting the Spartans, right? So they call him in to go to Athens for trial. So what he does, he flees. And where does he flee to? Fucking Sparta. Alcibiades, who's an Athenian general, goes and becomes a traitor basically, and sides with Sparta, right? And convinces he has this knack to convincing, right? He has this really good skill of rhetoric that he convinces the Spartan leaders that they make him a military advisor, a close military advisor. So he goes from becoming this hotshot in Athens, right, the epitome of beauty, to be this general, this failed general, to this traitor who is now working with the enemy, the Spartans, Alshibh. And this is Socrates' best friend. Doesn't look good for Socrates' reputation here, right? The classic model, right? Tell me who your friends are, I'll tell you who you are. Really here, it's going to hurt Socrates. So the only explanation that people have for why the fuck Alshibh would do such terrible actions is because he's totally enamored and under the influence of Socrates' philosophy. Socrates here is a threat. So because Alshibh is safe in Sparta, working for Sparta actually against his own Athenian homeland, the Athenians feel that they're going to make an example of somebody. And who do they use? This old wise man named Socrates. So they punish Socrates. They put him on trial, right, for corrupting the youth, right? And the best example of this is Alshibh, right? Alshibh had this promising career, right? The most beautiful man in Athens, right? He was going to be the leader of Athens. And why did he become a dismal failure and a traitor? Because he was so much influenced by Socrates. So corrupting the youth. And then the second charge that was brought against Socrates was believing in false gods, being impious, believing in his own god. And he does admit to this, Socrates, in the Apology, which is the recount of the trial of Socrates, that he has his own, that he talks to his own daimon. That's where we get our word demon from. But in the ancient Greek here, daimon just means like a little like God, like a little angel, like a little voice that speaks to you, tells you what to do, and it helps him out a lot. Supposedly, that's what Socrates says. But he says that he doesn't deny that he has his own little personal God, his own daimon, but he never blasphemes. He's not a blasphemous. But he does follow Athenian gods, right? But this is questionable, right? Because remember this guy Capharion, who I mentioned before, the Oracle of Delphi. Before I went on this historical rant about Peloponnesian War and Alcibiades and stuff. Well, this Capharion guy, the student of Socrates, he goes to the Oracle of Delphi. Right, so this Oracle of Delphi is where all these, you could be a Spartan, you could be an Athenian, Ionian, you could go to these oracles. They're like these institutions for the gods, right? These temples, basically. And they're there for truth saying, right? For predictions. So the Oracle of Delphi, right? Cities could go there, right? Athens, right? The consul could go there and be like, are we going to win this war or not? And then the oracle will give you like this cryptic message and be like, yes or no. Right? A lot of people, individuals, would go there too and be like, am I getting a divorce? Is my wife cheating on me? There were some of the questions that we found in tablets, right? The archaeologists that were asked to the Oracle of Delphi. And the priestess, right, that was there would give you the prediction, right? And supposedly the one in Delphi, the Oracle at Delphi, was really, really good at predicting stuff. Right? So she was really famous, right? So they would go there a lot. There's this theory that the reason why she was good at these visions, right? So she would go into trance and go into these visions and give you from these visions the future. It's because supposedly there's like these gases that erupted from there, right? In intervals. Gases where they live was right on top of this temple. And these priestesses, right? These young girls, right? Virgins, right? And they will get high on these gases and then we get visions. And then that was, for them, according to them, was the gods talking to them, right? So that's a theory of what, right? The under mechanisms of the Oracle of Delphi. But long story short, Capharion goes to the Oracle of Delphi and he asks the priestess there, is Socrates the wisest man? And the answer comes back, without any cryptic message, unequivocally, yes. What the fuck, right? There's no riddle to solve here. It's just yes. He is the wisest man. So Kypherion, he's all excited, right? He goes back to Athens and he tells his teacher, Socrates, guess what, guy? I just came from the Oracle of Delphi and she affirmed it to me that you're the smartest, wisest guy in Athens. And Socrates is like, what? That's bullshit. I'm not wise. I'm always asking questions. I mean, I believe I don't. This is what Socrates responds to Kypherion. All I know is I don't know. This is what we call intellectual humility, being intellectually humble. Right? Bullshit, right? Socrates knows a lot. Socrates is fucking smart, right? But he still nonetheless keeps his humility in order to keep on learning ever more. Right? Imagine if you are like Socrates, really well read, right? Whatever, and you just say, "Oh fuck yeah, I just know everything now. There's no need for me to learn more because I reached the pinnacle of knowledge. I am the wisest man. Even the Oracle of Delphi says I'm the wisest man. So that's it." And instead of doing that, or instead of being fucking cocky, Socrates is like, no, wait a minute, hold on, I'm not wise. All I know is that I don't know. I just want to keep learning more and more and more and asking why and why and why. Right, going back to my first lecture of the key term in philosophy always being why. And Socrates is like, why is this the case? So in order to prove his friend wrong, that he cannot possibly be the wisest man in Athens, Socrates goes on this mission on asking all the wisest, right, the ones that self-proclaim themselves to be the wisest man in Athens, so the biggest, baddest lawyers, right, the best priests, right, the best poets, the best politicians. Right? He goes to all these people and he asks them, right? He asks these people what they know, right? So he goes to Euthyphro. He's a priest, and he's like the head priest of Athens. So he must know what piety is, what faithfulness, what it means to be faithful is. And he asks him all these questions. He begins with this elenchus, the Socratic method, right? So he goes with who else does he go with? Miletus. He's a politician, or he's a poet. Um, who else does he go to? Anatus, Lycon. So Miletus, he's a poet. He's supposed to be. He claims himself, Miletus. He claims himself to be the best poet in Athens. That he knows all about poetry, right? And he's actually the prosecutor that brings the charges against Socrates, because Socrates proves Miletus that he doesn't know shit. He claims he knows everything about poetry, but with this Socratic method, this reductio ad absurdum, right, this reducing the claim to absurdity via contradictions of his own progenitor, Miletus finds out that he really doesn't know anything he's talking about. And that embarrasses the crap out of Miletus. Right? And not just Miletus, right? Socrates hears on a mission. So he goes to the poet, the best poet, Miletus. He goes with the best politician and craftsman, which is Anitus. He goes with Lycon, who is the best rhetorician. Right? He goes with Euthyphro, right? I mentioned him. He goes with the best of Athens, and every single time it's the same result. He makes them look like complete idiots. He makes them look like they don't know what they're talking about. And this is the way he does it with the Socratic method, the elenchus. So the elenchus is like this. I'm Miletus. I think I'm the best poet around. Shakespeare or whatever. And Socrates asked me a question. Well, what is poetry? And I respond, well, poetry is the love of words, for example. And then Socrates comes back with another question. Well, what do you mean, love? And what do you mean by words, right? Define these concepts, because these concepts are pretty broad. So me, Miletus, tries to define what word is, what I mean by words, and what I mean by love. And it goes on back and forth, right, to clarify more, where at the end of the day it becomes contradictory. What I first said becomes a contradiction. And it's all by these elenchus, by this Socratic method of question and answer. And the question is just simply to clarify, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by that? What do you mean by eternal? What do you mean by transcendent? What do you mean by clam? Whatever, right? What do you mean by oyster? Right? This is exactly what Socrates does. And needless to say, it pisses everybody off when he goes to, because it makes them look like idiots. And this is what Socrates says. Wow, it turns out that I am the wisest man in Athens. Whereas everybody that thinks they know and proclaims that they know actually don't know. And me, who says that I don't know nothing, turns out that I do know stuff. So because I maintain this humility, this intellectual humbleness of saying that I don't know, thus that keeps me learning more. You guys see this? With Socrates, why it's important the examined life is so important. That's why the unexamined life is not worth living. Because you just plateau and don't learn more. That's why you're gonna always pretend that you don't know in order to learn more and more and more. So that pisses everybody off. Everybody in power is pissed off against Socrates. And this is what we call him, the philosophical gadfly. Right? He's like a no mosca, he's like a fly, it's bothering you. Right? And what do you do with a fly? You kill it. Right? To end that threat, to end that pest. And that's exactly what happens to Socrates. And so Miletus, Anytus, and Lycon, the best of the best of Athens, they bring these charges against Socrates. And Socrates says, man, these are trumped up charges, right? These are charges not because I corrupt the youth, and not because I really believe in false gods, just because I made you guys look like fools, right? And because I did that, you should be thanking me, says Socrates in the Apology. So the really cool, ironic thing about this piece of literature by Plato, the Apology, that you should really read, is that the title is not an apology at all. Socrates is quirky, he's sassy, he comes with these awesome comebacks. He does not apologize at all. And why, right? He knows he's going to be put to death. That's like the penalty he's facing with these charges. And still he doesn't recant, right? And he's actually given the option to go into exile. And he says, nah, I'm an Athenian. I'm going to die in Athens. I'm already old. What the fuck am I going to do somewhere else, right? Athens is my homeland. And he says, you guys got it all wrong, guys, right? This is a democracy, right? So everybody's against Athens. I mean, Socrates. Because of his influence with Alshibh and his connection with these people here, these young men that are challenging tradition and authority in Athens. So this is what Socrates says. You guys got it all fucked up, guys. Got it all wrong, right? I'm doing a favor to Athens, right? So he says, you're charging me for corrupting the youth. How is that so? Right? How am I corrupting the youth? First of all, you claim that I'm a sophist, as Miletus is claiming, that I charge for this, right? That I get money for this, right? And that I don't care about justice or truth, that I just care about manipulating people's minds. Socrates says that's not true at all. First of all, I don't charge. Second of all, I don't force any of my students to listen to me. They come on their own accord. On their own, they come to me, right? And it's not my fault that they try to emulate my speaking, right? Because I opened up their brains. That's their responsibility. And that's exactly the favor I'm doing y'all to Athens. I am opening up people's brains, especially young aristocrat Athenian men who are going to essentially be the future leaders of Athens. This is important for them. Wisdom, in other words, right? Asking why, right? The love of wisdom, right? Philosophia. This is what Socrates is giving, not just to the Athenians, it turns out, to us as well in 2020, right? So this love of wisdom, this philosophia, right, is put on trial, right, as being a threat to the order of Athens, right? To the authority and to the traditions of Athens. And this is best illustrated in the image of Alshibh. Right, so Socrates is like, no, I'm doing you guys a favor. I am taking the Athenian youth away from the darkness of ignorance and into the light of wisdom. So instead of putting me to death or exile, instead of condemning me and punishing me, I should be getting a fucking reward. You shall reward me, says Socrates. And what kind of reward, he says? So let me go back, right? So there's two votes, right, in this in Athenian justice system. Right. The first vote is to find out if you're guilty or not. The second vote is to find out what kind of punishment you're going to deserve. So the first vote was kind of in the middle. Like Socrates was almost about to get let free, about to be found not guilty. The first vote is taken if he's found guilty, and he's found guilty by a vote of 281 to 220. Right? So by 81 votes, he was found guilty. It's a total of what, 501. So it's 500, and then the main, I guess, presiding council member. Right, so it's 501, I guess, jurors here, right? So 81, right, was the threshold here to become guilty or not guilty. Very, very close, but he's found guilty nonetheless. All right, fuck. And then here in the Athenian justice system, the accused was given the option, right, to choose his punishment, or to give. Actually, this is the way it worked. The prosecution would give a recommendation of what the punish, right, the guilty should get, and then the plaintiff, right, Socrates, right, the defendant, would give an opportunity to give his own option, his own recommendation of what punishment he should deserve, and then they would vote for which one they would go for. Right, so Socrates is found guilty in a very, very close vote of 281 to 220. Right, 59 votes. Right, very, very, very close, very close, very close. Right, so he was convincing to some extent, right, Socrates. So okay, so, but nonetheless, we're found guilty, Socrates. And Miletus, the main prosecutor, he's like, okay, what's your recommendation, Miletus? Fucking kill him, execute him. All right, that's the recommendation for the prosecution. What's your recommendation, defendant? And he's like, what the fuck, guys? Socrates is like, yo, you guys stupid? I'm helping you guys out. I should not be punished at all. I should be rewarded by what I'm doing to Athens. So my reward, what I suggest I should get, is the Prytaneum. The Prytaneum. The Prytaneum, guys, is the reward that the Olympic champions would get. So if you won the Olympics, whether it be the marathon or the chariot race, right, or the wrestling, whatever, the first place winner, the gold medal winner, will get the Prytaneum. And the Prytaneum is a free meals, free dinners for life until you die at the expense of the state. So Athens, says Socrates, you should not punish me to death or exiled. Y'all should give me the highest honor that a citizen could have, this Prytaneum, because what I'm doing to Athens, to the Athenian youth here, is a fucking service. So why am I being punished to this? I'm giving you philosophy, guys, and yet you're gonna put me to death. All right, fuck you then too, right? This is really Plato, right? Because Plato is the one who wrote the Apology, right? So Plato and Socrates hate democracies because of this, right? There's a democracy here that's putting philosophy to death because it's a threat to order, to those in power. So okay, so that pisses people off, right? Oh, okay, you're a smart ass. So they took a vote now of what he's gonna get. He's gonna get the Prytaneum or the death sentence. So the second vote of the punishment is a fucking landslide for execution against Socrates. The vote for the death penalty goes by 360 to 141. So now 360 jurors are like, nah, fuck this guy then. Fucking smart ass. But they actually give him a choice afterwards. It's like, yo, dude, you know what? We understand you're a pretty important guy, you know. So instead of giving you death, we'll give you a choice to exile. And Socrates was like, nah, I'm going to die for my principles. I'm going to die for what I believe in. I'm not going to run away. I'm going to stay where I was born, where I was raised, and what I fought for in the Peloponnesian War, and what I'm giving to y'all. Right? Athens, right? Everything I did was for Athens. I'm not going nowhere. So, all right, then. Here's your fucking hemlock, poison. Drink it up. Die. And he does. He does. He does it. Right. There's a beautiful scene, Socrates' death, right? And there's many painters that draw this painting. And this guy, Crito. Is it Crito? I believe it's Crito. No, Phaedo. Phaedo. Right? Is one of his followers, one of his students. And he's there with them. All of his students, most of his best students are there. Plato is there, present. A lot of his students are there when Socrates dies in prison. Right. And he had a chance to leave away, to move. He was going to pay a fine. His students were going to pay for him. They were all aristocratic, rich Athenian young men. And they were like, yeah, we'll pay that fine. And that's cool. Just go away, Socrates, stay alive. And Socrates is like, nah, guys, fuck that. Actually, as a matter of fact, Socrates says, it's pretty funny. Instead of paying that fine for me to go into exile and avoid death, I actually owe this guy a chicken. So go pay him. Go pay this chicken before I die. Because I don't want to leave any debts. That's Socrates. Right? Fucking cool guy. I think that's kind of cool. Right? So he's thinking about Athenians, even to the last day of his. Even though they put him to death, he's still thinking about Athenians. Right? So long story short, he takes a hemlock, and Phaedo is just crying, can't stop crying, and these people are like, how the hell can Athens be so stupid by killing the wisest man ever to live? Right? And this Phaedo, it's a beautiful story about Socrates talking about death, or about how we should not be afraid of death, because everybody's crying, and Socrates is just there chilling, just chilling there. It's like, drinking his hemlock, taking his time for him to die. And everybody's fucking freaking out. He's dying, the chingada, right? Socrates is like, yo, guys, like, fucking stop. This is annoying. He says it. It's annoying me. Like, stop it, guys. Like, you guys are looking like idiots, right? You guys are showing me that you guys are afraid of death. And you guys, by this fear of death, guys, you're showing me how ignorant you are and how terrible of a teacher I was. And I don't want to die this way. I want to believe I'm a good teacher, says Socrates, pretty much. You guys are afraid of death? You guys are ignorant, right? Don't be afraid of death. You're being afraid of nothing, something you don't know, right? Don't be afraid of ignorance, right? If you don't know what death is, why you should have any feelings towards it or judgment? You don't know what it is, Socrates says, maybe when I die, maybe it's nothing. Or maybe it could be I go with the greatest knights, I'll go talk with Homer and these famous pre-Socratics stuff, I'll go with them and Thales, right? And I can't wait if that's the case, and I can't wait to die then, right? But either or, we don't know what it is. So why be afraid of what you don't know, right? Stop wasting your time on that ignorance, right? So super, super stoic, right? Way to go, right? Just right? If you don't know, if you don't have control over that, don't worry about it. What I have control, says Socrates, is my feelings right now, and I just want to go out calmly, right? And chill, guys. Chill the fuck out, guys. Just let me go in peace. And he does, right? The hemlock kicks in, and then he dies peacefully, very calmly. Socrates is killed. Is killed by Athenian democracy, right? So philosophy has always been a threat, right, to those in power, whether it's democratic society, whether it be fascist society, right? Corrupting the youth, right? This is what I'm technically doing to you guys right now. I am corrupting the youth, you guys, right? I'm teaching you to think beyond authority, beyond tradition, and to think on your own, right? Two of the main models at the Oracle of Delphi were know thyself, right? Know thyself. And how do you know thyself? By examining yourself, by examining your life, right? Critically. And then the other model in front of the Oracle of Delphi was Do everything in moderation, basically. Very good models, right, to follow in life. Right? And this is what philosophy gives us, right? The skills, right? The elenchus to be able to question not just only ourselves and our own beliefs, but authority in general, in order to reach the truth. Right? Democracy for Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, it's just the herd mentality, right? It's just going with the bandwagon, right? And it's not thinking for, right? And that's what Socrates is all about. It's thinking for yourself. That's what it does. That's what the soul needs. That's its flourishment for the soul is wisdom, right? And for Socrates, wisdom, knowledge is caring for that soul. It's knowing your true self. Knowing how and what virtue is, says Socrates. So to be ignorant is to lack wisdom, right? And how do you get this wisdom? Is by continually probing and interrogating, right? And going through error and trial and error, right? Just everyday life, right? Always ask why. This is the love of philosophy, right? Knowing that you don't know in order to enable you to learn more. All right. So I guess this is enough for Socrates in ancient Athens Peloponnesian Wars. Next chapter is going to be Plato, his best student, and arguably, not arguably, I think it is pretty much a consensus, basically the foundation of the Western philosophical tradition. According to this white philosopher from 1920s, 30s, Alfred North Whitehead. And I think this is a really good analysis or description of the Western tradition in philosophy. And keep in mind, I say Western, right? The West, European philosophy. Because in chapter 6, we'll talk about non-Western, about Eastern philosophy, like Hinduism, Buddhism, Confucianism, Shintoism, right? And I also talk about American, right, the Americas, and during the ancient period. But Alfred North Whitehead talks about Plato as this. This is the way he describes Plato, and I think it's a very apt description of Plato as it concerns Western philosophy. The safest general characterization of the European philosophical tradition is that it consists of a series of footnotes to Plato. So all the philosophers after Plato have to dealt with Plato some way or the other. Even if you hate Plato, you still have to grapple with his ideas. He pretty much laid the foundation of what philosophy is today in the European tradition. Okay, keep that in mind. Right. All right. So we'll do Plato in chapter 4. The discussion boards are great. I think actually I want to say I'm kind of surprised by and interested, kind of piqued my interest on your replies to my question about whether in the U.S. today would somebody be put to death because of their opinions, like Socrates was. And I've been teaching for 5 years now, and almost all the time before this class, everybody would say no. No, we live in this great country of democracy, right? And we live in America, right? We have freedom of speech, First Amendment. But most of y'all are responding like the opposite now. Right? It's just I don't know what I'm trying to make. Trying to wrap my head around that. I mean, it's obviously an indication the state of affairs in the U.S. right now, right? But I kind of hate to be so pessimistic, no? But I'm loving the discussions. You guys keep it up. My eyes are getting a little bit better, so I'll be more involved now with the discussions, and I'll be doing these. I'll be trying to catch up with these lectures here, right? So y'all be safe. Wash your hands constantly, and wear a mask. All right. See you for next chapter.